even the king of birds is sold into the black market, stuff like. And the myths are forgotten, stuff like. There isn't a single person that is unnecessary. I think that ties into Buddha nature. There isn't a single person that is unnecessary. See what I mean? You don't really see many people say that anymore. They just this view people in terms of utility and how well they you know serve the industrial system. I mean that's the way things are going. Yeah. Yeah, there's
Yeah, I don't know if you ever looked at the thoughts of Alfred Russel Wallace.
Alfred Russell. I know you talk about him a lot. So yeah, Alfred Russell.
Yeah, yeah, because Bateson, I mean, no, I guess both Bateson and McKenna sort of accused, um, um, I'm sort of, I think both Lyell and Darwin of stealing the theory of evolution from him.
Yeah, yeah. I think the the thing I think is that when talking about evolution, when you start talking about like uh what drives it, you know what I mean, or like what moves it, that has to evolve philosophical questions, you know what I mean, cannot be fully empirically analyzed. You see what I'm saying? It has to evolve, but tracing like what happened is different, you know what I mean? Like tracing to the past is different from describing what drives it, you know what I mean? And empiricals in some ways I would say describes what drives evolution better than Darwin or something. Empedocles, you know what I mean? Was a
Right.
very interesting book. I read his fragments,
Yeah,
Empedocles
love
fragments.
and strife and that whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, that whole thing. Yeah, you know, you can even mix, Zoroastrian stuff into it. You can mix. I don't see it as contradicting Buddhism. I don't see it as contradicting the idea of a god. You know what I mean? I don't see people are actually, when they say evolution disproves God, that's a lie. You know what I mean? Doesn't it? Actually, depending on how you view evolution, can actually prove God. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? Uh, yeah, that's like Aristotelian prime mover. You know what I mean? Uh, the like I read that quote about summarizing Aristotle from Scribner's Panpsychism, but I think I should read more Aristotle. I need to read them more deeply. Maybe. Have you read like Plato and Aristotle deeply, or like through secondary sources mainly?
Yeah,
In this case,
I read parts of the De Anima about Aristotle. I've read a lot more Plato. You know,
yeah,
yeah, I've read a lot of Plato. Right, so
I think that uh, metaphysics by Aristotle is probably most useful for me. Metaphysics, though, but I don't know if I can just jump into Aristotle, or I should read some Plato beforehand, like the primary source material. What do you think? I know Plato's a separate realm of forms, and the emanations. I think. Do you think I should actually read Plato like
yeah,
the primary
oh yeah,
source?
yeah, it's
Like,
huge. Yeah, it's really
like
important.
what? Like what books of Plato should I read? I don't want to read too much. I want to try to get to Aristotle more quickly and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I think for Aristotle, I would recommend, I think politics and De Anima and that sort of stuff. I mean, for Plato, I would recommend, the Republic, right?
Uh,
Um,
yeah, but I
I can
want to
go through
mainly,
so much.
but I want to mainly focus on the metaphysics. I don't really care about their views
Yeah,
on
that's the
society.
thing is that on the surface, the Republic looks like it's a book on politics, but once you start getting, um, I mean, I think books 4 through 7, it does get into a lot of metaphysics stuff, right? It lays down his basic theory of metaphysics, like for example, the whole theory of the cave, right, is in the Republic, right, and I'm in book 7, so it kind of gets into some of his metaphysical speculations there, right?
It's a lot of
So I
stuff
think,
to read. Lots
yeah,
to read. There's always more to read. But it is true that modern evolutionary biology, the more interesting stuff is moving in an Aristotelian direction, because biosemiotics by Jesper Hoffmeyer went a lot into the Aristotle, and my videos on YouTube go
Yeah,
into that.
another thing I think is it's hugely important for the evolution and all that stuff. Is a symposium, right? Symposium has got stuff in there, right? Because it's about like giving birth to beauty and stuff, right? And then then also Aristophanes has this entire theory that that men and women, they used to be like one being or whatever, right? And then they split into two, right? So yeah.
Yeah, lots to read. Yeah, lots to read. Yeah. Yeah. So let's see here. What else can I talk about? Intro to. Maybe talk about crows a bit, or maybe some. Oh, actually, I want to share this. Yeah. Like, how much time do you have? Like, or like, I don't want to take up. Yeah, I can keep going on. I don't know how long I should go. Let me
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, I'm around.
You're around. Yeah. Then you find that book I had. You know, what's great is now you can go just on LibGen and download any book you want. Uh, that's cool. And sometimes I do that. Yeah, get that book. Uh, So yeah, just keep talking, or well, I try to get the book I have or something.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we're having an
Yeah.
important
Um,
sort of
so
important show tonight. I think Neuro's also here.
yeah, he's here.
Yeah, but we're having an important show tonight. We're having a friend of a Buddha. Come and talk about uh, I guess Hegel and Bohm and Teilhard de Chardin. So, he's going to be giving some opposing views to my normal presentations and sort of we're going to be looking at the ideas on their own terms and seeing sort of philosophical ideas in support of transhumanism, right? So it's going to be a very important show, significant show, and so yeah, I implore you guys to come over there to the Machine Lies channel, and yeah, we'll of course, it's part of a greater series in which we're looking at different ideas about the proliferation of technique. And of course, we're looking at different thinkers throughout history that many have not, may or may not heard of, like Rousseau, like Carlyle, like um, Samuel Butler, for example, right? And of course, we're looking at whether in Marx and Hegel you could look at what their views are on nature and technology, given that they have a very specific, a sort of metaphysical, starting point, right? Given their philosophy of history, right? And of course, their ideas of progress, right? So yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty interesting.
that's interesting. Hopefully my friend doesn't get sick. Last night he told me he's feeling a little sick. He might record a video and give it to me, and then I can share you his video, or he might be able to make it after see what he says. But he lives in Slovenia, which is he said he'll try to make it, but which will be
Yeah,
2 a.m. this time. But yeah,
yeah, no worries.
he's smarter than me, to be honest. He's read of more of the primary source material in depth, but I do think I smarter than someone like Jordan Peterson or like Ben Shapiro and all those
Right.
idiots. Yeah, like yeah, but yeah, that's the way it is. Like it's just good to like yeah. I mean, I could just share more stuff. I guess. I don't know. I see here. Oh, how the hell is that window? The window is not sharing. I see here. So okay, this my screen. Can you share my screen? Is my screen sharing or is sharing right? Or
No, there's nothing there.
that's interesting. Why doesn't my screen share?
Yeah, it's just black, so
Yeah. Oh, that's freaking weird. Let's see it. Oh, I see why it's not sharing because I didn't put it on the stage. See, I have to get used to this. I'm getting more used to it. And like I read this book in full, Handbook of Bird Biology, and it has a lot of interesting stuff, but they do kind of like it does feel kind of soulless in some parts, but some parts are interesting. Like I read it in full because I wanted to get into ornithology. But the reason I mention it is because there are some things that are interesting. Also, the shows how beautiful the biodiversity can look, and also it could show like yeah, I read some Goodreads reviews too and stuff. Yeah, but anyway, I'll show this because later it talks about some techniques. It talks about dinosaurs. Archaeopteryx, one of the most famous of all fossilized organisms.
oh yeah, I think Neuro's in the back there.
Nero's in the back now.
Um,
He's here. Nero's here.
yeah, that's what it says. Yeah, it's all the way on the bottom there. Yeah, because you got a lot of stuff backstage. Yeah, it's no worries.
This is your favorite Iranian American, Patrick Bet David. How may I help you?
No. he's actually Assyrian. He's an Assyrian minority.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his nationality is Iranian. There's there's lots of ethnic diversity in Iran. You know what I mean? I think I myself am like I don't know, Talish or something. Made Talish, Talysh, but they went into like I don't know, like Isfahan, and then they went to Tehran or something. But I don't think I'm Isfahani though. But yeah, they're different ethnic groups though. There are lots of different. But he's not really like.
Do you think he's related to the Scorpion King from The Mummy 2?
Yeah, I remember the Scorpion King. I kind of forget all the stuff. I I don't really remember all of that. Sorry. Yeah, I forgot about. Yeah, I forgot about the Scorpion King stuff.
Well,
Yeah, I
well,
don't know.
well, what? So, what do you think that was about? You got Anubis with a dog head, given the king of the king of the Assyrians a scorpion body. What's that about?
Well, I don't remember all the pop cultural stuff. I have to look it up. Can you tell me again, like, what is it from again? What are you referring to? Or something?
Well, it's about the Egyptians fighting with the Assyrians, and then the Assyrians lose, and then the leader makes a deal with the Anubis or something to like get the scorpion body and shit.
Yeah, but what movie? What movie were you talking? Mortal Kombat?
The Mummy 2.
Oh, Mummy too. Okay.
Mortal Kombat.
Sorry, I wasn't hearing. I didn't sleep that well last night. Oh yeah, I remember this movie. I think that's The Rock, right? That's The
Yep,
Rock.
that's right. That's right. He
Yeah.
was LARPing as if he's Assyrian.
Oh yeah. Well, Assyrians are kind of big into like their magic and other stuff. The symbol for Ahura Mazda and Zoroastrianism comes from the Assyrian Ashur. At least that's what typical scholasticism says. You see the Ashur symbol, and then you see their tree, the tree of life from Kabbalah, came from Assyria. You know what I mean? Came from the Assyrian tree of life. I believe so. Assyrians were highly influential in the Middle East, but they were very genocidal.
So are Jews crypto Assyrians?
No, they're not. They're not crypto-Assyrians. They're a different group. Ashkenazi probably don't even racially or matrilineally descend from the Jews and like Mizrahi Jews, or they don't descend from actual Jews in the Middle East. They descend probably like from I don't know Eastern Europeans or like just some group like I don't know maybe Huns or something. I don't know. they're like recent converts or something. You know, that's what the studies show. Actually, the studies do show that Ashkenazi do not matrilineally descend from ancient Jews from the Levant or Middle East. They do not. But Assyrians were highly genocidal people, though. You know, what I mean, they were pretty creepy. You know, what I mean, like they went and would flay people and take their skin and decorate walls with it. Stuff like. They did invade Elam. They invaded Kassites. There was like civilizational collapse before the Persians came from Central Asia. You know, I think Persians were originally more like Yagnobis or Pamiri Tajiks. You know, and then they came from Central Asia and they intermingled with the people and they became more like modern Persians, but it is true that they did have a strong Nordic component, which is from Sintashta people. You can look it up. Type Sintashta on Google, Sintashta, and you'll see that those people were genetically close to Swedes. You know, they invaded Central Asia. They intermingled with BMAC. You know, I could talk about this stuff a lot because I researched this stuff. I've studied the Gathas. I've studied some of their ancient beliefs. You know, I haven't read the early Vedas as much, but I have like read secondary sources on it. You know, I've read lots of the Upanishads, but that is kind of different. Later Upanishadic tradition is very different from early Vedic tradition. But yeah, this what I'm saying is the steppes is kind of like the desert. You know, like we were talking about before in terms of like the origin of. But what's interesting is that you Northwest Europeans do have stronger genetic ties to the steppes, you know, than you do to the desert. You know, like that's the big, like the ancient Jews, they were closer to Palestinian people than they were to modern Europeans. But the ancient original speakers of Iranian languages, they were closer to you than to me. You know, I mean, when I learned that stuff, it blew my mind. It did lead to some identity crisis for some time, but I got over it. Does that make sense? Like the Santashta people. It could be fabricated. I don't know, you know what I mean? But I don't think it's fabricated because that's a very big conspiracy and stuff. You know, but it's interesting, you know, I mean, that's a different tradition. So early Vedas and Zoroastrian tradition were heavily influenced by these steppe people. And you had like, you know, Scythians and Santashta. I know that Twilight talks about that stuff a lot, but Twilight is he kind of doesn't stick to scholarly resources as much as me. You know, what I mean, I stick it closer to the scholarly content.
Are you saying that's because he's Italian and he's genetically inferior and he needs to go be
No, that's not what I'm
developed in
saying.
the lab with
Italians have a very rich culture. Italians have a rich culture. You know, so do British people. So do I mean, it's like a rich culture. You know, what I mean, you know, all of them have rich culture. You know, I'm not really like trying to pick fights with any race. Even Pakistanis have a rich culture. You know, I mean, all the cultures.
Who's the natural what's the natural enemy of a raven?
A raven, you know, probably an eagle, you know, or a hawk, you know, because you know I've studied crows more. You know, ravens are a bit different from crows, but
Well, the
ravens are more
Jews have said that the like you notice that all these different flags have an eagle, you know, America, so they see the eagle as representative of some sort of clan of people, you know, all these different countries have the eagle symbol. So is
I
that
think
why
that
is that why you're trying to do like a crypto war against the eagle clan?
no, eagles can be very intelligent too. There's something called firehawks. You can Google it. This is more from anecdotal experiments. They can grab burning sticks. Okay, they grab the burning stick and they throw it into like a field to flush out prey. And then they can get the prey from the field that's burning, like mice or whatever. And you know, they can actually use fire to do that. And
So
this is
so what you're saying is if the Jays are smart enough to throw a burning stick into a field and us little Edoms run out of the little caves that we're dwelling in, that they deserve to win because they're smart?
no, no. Are you okay, Neurojack? Like you're making a weird connection. You know, I don't know if it's just a joke, but
No, this is how he does.
like, I was saying, no, I don't think the Jays. And I do think the Jays are like flooding Europe, you know, because they want to destabilize it, and they also want like ethnic infighting, you know, stuff like that, and that way they
Well,
can like.
I want a little ethnic infighting right now. Machine, he's calling you a burning stick that the eagle threw into the Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, but yeah, like yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff. But yeah, so I would say maybe they're more like brood parasites. Brood parasites are kind of creepy creatures. I
So,
actually
so they're
talked to
kind of like the Yeerks from Animorphs. They like that's kind of my concern though. Is like if we morph into eagles and ravens, and then we have these Yeerks that get into our brains and control us. Does it accomplish the goal that you're looking for?
no, no. My goal is reducing and scaling back technological complexity to like 1200, 1400 AD levels.
Well, the best way
And
we could do that is to become E. coli bacteria, and then we don't have to worry about anything, right?
no, no, no. I don't think that's the proper approach. You know, uh, like it's hard to figure out what's the solution. The solution is harder to figure out. But like I think one way is not to value the search for efficiency as much. Another way is to like let people who live in their native country only have political power. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make sense for like I don't know, like in Iran to give power to I don't know a Western African or give power to someone who's
Yeah, but
non-Iran.
that's the thing is like the disease is spread everywhere. I mean, you have people in every country who just see themselves as like the
Yeah.
tribe that's being oppressed, and therefore they must throw the burning stick into the field and watch all the people that are just like them run away because they just think that that's like their own idea, I guess, right? So
Uh, yeah, I mean, the analogy is weird, but yeah, I mean, it's a techno-liberalism is a problem, like they spread the liberal ideals and, you know, but I would argue the reverse is bad too, you know what I mean? Like you see, go on Twitter, you see massive dehumanization from the far right, that's ridiculous too, but at the same time, you cannot ignore that liberalism is totally unnatural, you know what I mean? Like no one ever did that stuff, like flooding a country with basically they treat the country as like a gray economic zone, okay? And so then the immigrants come over, they get assets, they buy properties, but they don't really like respect the culture, they just view it as like an opportunity to like make money and settle down. Like that guy in your image, I think Ben David, I think so. He doesn't really care about like communal or European culture. To them, it's just a country to make money in.
well,
You know what I mean?
well, the founding fathers, they used the ideas of Milton to create hell on earth, aka utopia, for uh, the people to come and serve the British Empire under the guise of economic, you know, affluence and stuff like that. I mean, he served our country as a veteran, so he deserves to go and scam people out of money and buy his way into politics. I mean, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. The common people suffer, and that's not a real. They're not really a true aristocracy or something. They're more like parasites themselves. These parasitical upper class technicians or whatever. Like I've looked at the communal culture of a lot of countries. Like I watched documentaries on communal culture of Britain and even Italy. I don't like to like pick a fight with any race. Especially the higher ones. I would say West Africans. I don't I'm not trying to offend people of West African descent, but they do not have a higher culture. Africans do not really the Westerners. They don't.
But here's the thing: is like Russians probably had a high culture at some point, but they don't really have one now. I mean, well, I guess I mean, maybe it depends on which one, but and I'm seeing like here in the West, like white people are kind of losing their high culture because it's being turned into like victim, communist,
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you
thing. So
100%. Yeah.
So what I'm saying
I'm
is
with
that
you
like if that's the standard of like whether or not to dehumanize people, like isn't that I mean, basically we're all susceptible at some level, right?
Yes. Yes. I mean, there's white people are being attacked for a non-existent privilege. I mean, I have friends, online pen pals for years, from rural Arkansas. I mentioned him before. He's a very poor guy. You know, it's not like he's getting benefits for being white. Yeah, people think white privilege exists or whatever. It's not really privilege. You know, if you live like in a country for generations, you're gonna have more connections than a so-called immigrant, which is natural. You know, what I mean, you're gonna have more connections. You know, what I mean, and you know, there's no attacking white people for like their privilege or their, you know. But to be honest, I don't really like calling white people white because you know there are people. I like calling them Western European. You know, Western European is both a race and a culture, but maybe you can divide that further, like Germanic people versus Mediterraneans. You know, the way you classify race is its own, you know, way, its own job. You know what I mean? But I would say like Northwest Europeans constitute their own race. South Europeans constitute their own.
Do you think that people with a brain chip will be their own race too, though?
Well, at that point, they're like no longer connected to us. Yeah, they're a different race. Yeah, human 2.0. I mean, that's what Klaus Schwab talks about. Human 2.0, and also Yuval Harari. So he calls it human 2.0. You know, human 2.0 is like a new stage of evolution that's no longer connected to us as much.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
retractable penis or something.
yeah. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
invented that in the fourth grade. We were talking about screwing off, and I said, "Well, wouldn't it be weird if you could screw off and screw on your penis?" And I think Klaus Schwab plagiarized me. He studied me in fourth grade and stole my joke and put it in his book.
Yeah, at least they're honest and direct or upfront if you actually listen to them. Like they kind of spell out everything they're going to do, kind of. I mean, in some sense, they're honest. Like they're telling you what they plan, you know, like Human 2.0. But if what Brown's boy tells me about his friend, you know, who's involved in DARPA, you know, they already have quantum computers, they already have very advanced tech that's 10 or 15 years ahead of what we see. So that means they're just rolling out the technology to make it seem like organic development. Well, the military or DARPA already have this advanced technology.
Right.
They're just rolling it
Yeah,
out.
and I'm sure there's no reason to suspect somebody that would break their NDA of top secret information to tell you the truth. I'm sure that's totally.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Like maybe I'm gullible. I don't know. You know, I don't know. But I did read recent study that said graphene can go over the thermodynamic limitations of quantum computers. And you know, I have a friend in Sweden. You know, well, it's not really a friend, acquaintance. You know, I talked to him. He was into theoretical physics. He claimed that quantum computers cannot really go over the thermodynamic limitations. They have to be in extremely cold environment or whatever. And he said it's just all a bunch of sensationalization. Like the media is sensationalizing quantum computers. But then I read a few years later that graphene has gone over the limitations. So I don't know if that's true or not. Like my background in that stuff is somewhat weak, but you know what I'm trying to say is that you know I do believe that Brown's boy's friend is telling the truth that they probably already have quantum computer and stuff. You know, we have crazy stuff now. People are not like talking
Sure.
about more.
Well, but like, what does that mean though? So that means that all the people working on the technology basically are non-existent, other than the fact that they're test subjects. So it's like this
Yes.
person might be like, being like brainwashed by the AI to go and say certain things to get people interested in certain things, and the whole time that the AI is pulling the strings, you wouldn't really know what the goal or what the situation actually is, would you? Right? So.
Well, that's like Philip K. Dick kind of, you know, PKD, you know, kind of stuff. That's kind of what we're heading towards, you know, like it's probably good to read him more, maybe like he has some
Yeah,
very
and where
trippy
and
stuff.
where is DARPA man? I mean, I thought we were going to get this guy on like a year ago or 10 years ago or something. I don't know. Time is fluctuating, like PKD said, so I don't know. My Ganesha statue is warping time around it or something. So
Yeah, I'm trying to get like a consistent audience of like 30 people back to the show. So maybe like at that point, I might like definitely invite them to come by because it'll be like, because I don't want people to come by as like such low people watching.
but yeah. Well, I think we should just go get Elon Musk on the show, and then after he's on, we'll have a general audience of like at least 10 or 15 people. So I'll try to hit him up on the DMs or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's very interesting stuff. Maybe I can show a bit of blame by Nihei on here. I don't know if that will get this taken down, but and that hopefully something like that doesn't happen. Basically, it has Silicon Life Nihei is manga where it starts to like self-replicate, self-evolve, and it's like a it's like a Dyson sphere around the sun or something, and it's like a big ass factory or a megalith that keeps constructing itself endlessly. You know what I mean? And it's like the Silicon Life is like a life form that preys on human. I mean that's like a very common stuff. But the thing I like about uh, blame with an exclamation point is that it really show the sense of desolation that it brings. You know what I mean? It does. The thing about nihilists like Thomas Ligotti and the other ones. There are a couple others who are influenced by it. And I think that's more due to mechanization. That view of the extreme pessimism and nihilism that they see man as a puppet or something. I mean, his stories are kind of they're well written, but I would say they're based on a false perception, or rather, I don't think people are like that. But yeah, that's kind of went off on a tangent. But yeah, the yeah, that's right.
No,
But yeah,
you know a lot of you know a lot more about this kind of stuff than most people. I mean, so like I'm being facetious about a lot of things, but you really do. You've definitely read your shit, and I think that it's like I don't understand where the whole like Buddhism thing's coming from because I think that you open yourself up to a lot of critique when you start blending like religion with like philosophy, which I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's like the game is a lot more serious, and so I'm trying to being facetious to kind of get people in the mind frame of like, I mean, you kind of have to think like Philip K. Dick if you want to try to see like where things are headed, right? I mean, you can't, so anyways, I just say that
I
to
know what you
to
mean. Actually, I know what you mean. Uh, that's actually a valid point. Is yeah, yeah. I actually was thinking about that before I made the channel. It's a valid point. Like, should I be like, make it more precise and narrow my focus is, or branch out more? And I kind of branch out a lot, but I think branching out a lot is better in this context because the more integrative you can have, more integrative knowledge, the more profound it can get and more enchanting, but it can also influence other interesting ideas. So that I know that was a risky choice, but I did do that. But the thing is, I don't want to just make this for Buddhists. I'm okay with Christians and Muslims and others too, because what I'm trying to argue for is that if you look at my original video, my introduction, is that I see evolution as more spiritual, basically, and that God is above that, or Buddha, and it's so the evolutionary process is subordinate to that. And then I'm trying to make people think about it more metaphysically. You know what I mean? And I use the third way of evolution to do that. And of course, people like Dave Frenna would have a lot of problems with me, but I would debate them in a more professional manner. But I have to
well
prepare a lot.
well but this is the thing is like a lot, and this is kind of the larger sense, like you're gonna have disingenuous people, not unlike people who are in the chat right now, and they're gonna tell you things you want to hear. They're gonna tell you that they understand. They're gonna tell you this and that. But ultimately, like when you look at the larger debates and framing of the narratives and stuff like that, like you know, every time that you actually have a genuine take or you engage with these people, like you do disrupt what they're doing. But that's why you get cut out very quickly, right? Because they don't want disruption in like their like dialectics or dialectical materialism, whatever that means. But you know what I mean? Like they don't want they don't want people to interfere with the way that they're constructing the narratives, right? So in engineering the narratives, right? And that's the thing is like if you look at the debates of like Andrew Wilson or these kind of people, it looks like it's just like retarded and it's nonsense, but it's actually very carefully constructed rhetoric to like sell you a worldview, right? And so that's the thing is like you kind of have to think about like what audience are you trying. And again, I'm talking to myself just as much as either one of you guys for sure. But it's like you really look at it, it's like you have to think about who's the audience that you're really trying to reach, and like what's the best way to make the most impact. Like, are you trying to reach the normies? Are you trying to reach the people who've read bioethics and comprehend biological stuff? Are you trying to reach people who have a religious bent or whatever? And maybe it's a little bit of everyone, but that's the thing is like you have to think of it from a marketing standpoint. You have to think of it from a narrative construction standpoint. You have to think of it from a truth standpoint. Like
let me tell you something interesting. Okay, and this is something I've noticed, but I don't understand why. I don't know if it's just me, my cognitive style, or just like this is like so important. I don't see people talk about spiritual machines. You see this a lot in literature and fiction. Like they think that machines can become spiritual. The
Yep.
machines can eventually recognize God. You see that a lot in literature and movies. But you never see people like question the possibility, like real, deeply, like whether or not can future lineages of non-human species, like I don't know, dolphins or crows or raccoons or whatever, can they reach the capacity to recognize God or to become Buddha? So my question is, in like one sentence, can non-human lineages reach capacity to recognize God or become
well,
Buddha?
here's the thing though, is
That's
like
the important question.
here's the thing is you are a human, and for the foreseeable future you won't be anything other than a human. So like why not focus on like yourself and other people like reaching enlightenment or whatever, right? Like that's what I don't understand. Again, I'm not insulting you. I'm just saying like that's what I think is the disconnect is. And again, like here's the thing is you might actually reach a lot of people who have fur babies and
Mm,
like want to like
mm,
love their dog like it's a human or something. But I'm just saying like I don't necessarily know that like looking in your dog's eyes and meditating with them is like gonna like bring you to enlightenment. I mean, it might, but I mean, I've tried
uh,
it. It didn't really work.
Well, here's how I
uh,
think. Yeah, here's how
uh,
I think it's. Yeah, here's how I think it's pretty important. It's because of this idea that he's talking about. Of semiotic freedom, right? So if we have, iconicity that relates back to nature instead of one that relates back to machines, right? Like for example, comparing nature to, machines, or saying that machines can become conscious. Instead of saying that nature is conscious or animals are conscious, and having iconicity that represents nature as the technology instead of the mechanical idea, because the mechanical ideal is sort of like expanding to nature, right? Where they're comparing nature to man's creations, and that's because of the symbolic reference frame, right?
Well, that's kind
So
of what
that's
I'm
just
getting at, in a sense. At least I think that's what I'm getting at. Is like, well, like here's the thing: is like, okay, let me do a little slight panel poll, if you will. So would any of you guys say that like, well, I don't even know if we can really talk about this on YouTube, so I'll try to say it carefully. Do you think that people who are experiencing gender dysphoria, by you affirming their dysphoria, um, that you are helping this person with whatever it is that they're experiencing? And maybe that's a loaded question, but I think it's important to kind of what I'm trying to get to.
yeah, I'll answer that question, but I need like 1 or 2 minutes to use the bathroom. I'll come back. So you can keep talking among yourselves, but I'll come back to answer the question in 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah, and I'll get to the point very quickly after that. But I mean, this is not me being facetious right now. So I'm actually being serious. So, Machine, how about you? Would you say that if that affirming someone's gender dysphoria is something that you personally can say that like from your worldview that you could say that it's like
Look,
you could
I'm a
see a
monkey and I
benefit in
demand
doing
my
it?
own bathroom, okay? That's just how it's gonna be, all right? I demand my own bathroom. No one's gonna stand in my
Yeah.
way.
So what do you think, Twilight? Do you think that's something good to do?
What's that?
To affirm someone's gender dysphoria?
No. Yes, it's complicated. I think that there's a
Okay.
very
Okay.
small percentage of people that legitimately, I wouldn't say they're in the wrong body, but I think that their hormones and their, well, pretty much everything um, is more aligned to whatever energy, like basically they're kind of right. Like, I don't think that it's physical. I think that they believe it's physical because they don't understand the deeper layers of it. They don't understand feminine and masculine energy can exist in males and females. And so they take something that's like alchemical and they externalize it. That's pretty much how I see it because androgyny has been a thing in religion since the beginning of time. You know, obviously it's in the Talmud, but it's in pretty much every tradition. That's why you had the castrate. If you really look into it, masonry is literally like the square and compass. I got a big secret for you. It has nothing to do with geometry. It's a castration tool. Legit. That's why they wear aprons. And this gets into the female. Jack, you know what I'm talking about. Like, that's really what it is. And the
Yeah.
castrati and the eunuchs, if you get into that, and the cults that existed with that, like Sibel and all this, and the frenzies, and like that's really what they're bringing back, man. They're bringing their religion into the mainstream. That's what's happening. This isn't political. This isn't like that's what's actually going on. It's just they're coming out of the darkness into the light, dark to light, right? Like that's what it is, man. Like the very tippy top, the Order of Sion and all these, like, whatever groups like behind the Templars and all that. Like,
They transform us.
this is their religion. It's been that way since prehistory.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming, Twilight, and also see you later, Neurojack. I think he left. But yeah, oh yeah, Lone Wolf want to come on. Yeah, I didn't see he was trying to come on. Sorry about that, Remington. I didn't see
Oh,
you.
yeah, blessings.
Yo.
I have to still get used to the interface a little bit. Like,
Yeah, it's hard to see
yeah,
people in the studio sometimes. Yep.
yeah, it's especially if you put a lot of stuff. You put a lot of stuff. Yeah. So, about that question he asked, I don't see how that was relevant to what I brought up, but it's still an interesting question. But to me, I think it's a question about what's organic versus not organic. You know
Well,
what I mean?
that's
Like,
exactly. Well, that's exactly it.
yeah, when a culture develop organically, they tend to deal with these kind of things differently, or depending on their sensibilities that emerged organically versus inorganic, technician manipulation that leads to like
Right.
more.
Well,
Yeah,
that's exactly it. Is because they believe that humanity is broken and they can improve it. That's the whole thing. That's their religion. Like, if you look at all the, I'm sure you've been listening to Machine. I know, uh, and me and him used to always be. I've just had so much going on. Me and him always used to be live together. And we've gone over this, up to a million times. You just got to look at like Ray Kurzweil and what they actually believe. Like, they tell you what they believe in no uncertain terms. Humanity is flawed. Nature is flawed, and they can improve it. That's what the Human 2.0 is all about. There wouldn't be a Human 2.0 if they thought that Human 1.0 was, good. They despise humanity and nature as it is.
yeah. They
Like,
also
that's
don't
just the
believe.
reality.
They don't believe in like any higher transcendental thing, like like Dharmakaya or God or
No, they do, but they
yeah,
believe that they're it.
yeah.
They
They think
believe they're the true, like, what they call Gnosticism is Kabbalism. 110%. And it doesn't look like that because, like, what people see as mainstream Kabbalism doesn't look like that. But if you get into the deeper levels, and especially like the more heretical, like, that's exactly what they believe. The Gnostics was literally the opposite. They were animists. So the idea that this is a fallen world or whatever the hell is completely antithetical. But and it's seen as an archon intrusion.
I really,
They
I really respect your
externalize.
views. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, respect your views. Yeah, that's definitely I agree with that. Like Yuval Harari and Human 2.0, they do feel like,
Right.
yeah,
Yes, exactly. Exactly. There's no better example than him. Free will is an illusion. Rights are not real. They're a fantasy. They're just something we talk about. He
yeah,
can rewrite the Bible better with AI and like all this type of shit. Like, yeah. Yuval Noah, what's his name, said that he wanted to become a god, and that if anyone got in his way, there were going to be problems. You know, like I said, Kurzweil constantly talks about how everything is damaged. Like he wants to find a way to be immortal and shit. Like these people are nuts. They claim to be atheists, but they're incredibly religious. If you really look at their philosophy.
yeah, they are religious in the more profane kind of way. They're kind of profane. They're very profane. There's no doubt about that. You
Well,
know,
well, like in the highest levels of Kabbalism, you basically understand that they are truly satanic, in the sense of like what Christians would consider Satanism, not the circus of like Anton LaVey. It's basically a distraction. Um, in the sense that they want to pull God off his throne and take his place. Like that's really what it's about at the end of the day. That's how they see it. They want to improve God's creation.
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what Ludwig Klages wrote about in the literature of his that's translated into English. They have an obsession with, fixing mankind or renovating the world. They want to just control it more, exploit it more. You kind of see that in how technique has taken place. And I already talked about this before you came, but this article is very evil. I mean, like, biological agency, a concept without research program. And basically, they're arguing that agency and is an illusion. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm attacking, from third way of evolutionary biology and from, biosemiotics, I'm attacking and saying that agency is real. I mean, I agree with you about free will. And, goodbye, Twilight, I guess, goodbye. Yeah, agency is real, what I mean? And, they say some crazy shit in this, you know, essay, they say stuff like, there's no agency, They see, they only care about what's useful in terms of exploiting and tampering with, yeah, that was random. Well, I've already talked about this before. Basically, the acceptance of anything that would be detrimental to the progress of biological sciences is rejected, dismissed, because they think the mind is just an epiphenomenal illusion. They think agency is an illusion. The modern synthesis or neo-Darwinism is very stupid. It's very stupid stuff. You know, uh, no such progress has been made by invoking notions of goals and agency. So that means we should invoke notions of goals and agency. I mean? And I can read some reviews I have of like, uh, some books I've written on the third way of evolution, because they're all about bringing back goals and agency to the evolutionary process. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's the crazy thing. Many people don't realize that about neo-Darwinism, or modern synthesis. They don't believe goals and agency exist. I mean? You're just a puppet, basically. I mean, I said that a lot already. Yeah, basically, it would have to be linked to some empirically detectable feature of the system, other than the actual outcomes of its behavior. But that basically dismisses like the internal life of the being, or something like that, or like the yeah, and yeah, this kind of ties into panpsychism also. And like basically one good thing about this article is at least all the stuff they say is bad tends to be good. You know what I mean? So for example, one can avoid positing sharp discontinuities or emergence events by picturing cognitive agency as being a continuum or gradient, stretching back in a time with, say, bacteria also having cognitive states, but to a lesser degree. A gradualist view of agency may be seen as being more consistent with evolutionary gradualism, and blah, blah, the evolutionary emergence of a complex trait is not explained by imagining the same trait to be present in earlier evolution to lesser degrees, and it should be concerning that the same gradualist reasoning against emergence and discontinuity has been used to support panpsychism, the idea that even elementary particles possess consciousness to some degree. And so, yeah, I wanted to read that for Twilight, but he left though. And but yeah, that I already read that, so yeah. But yeah, I need to finish the whole essay. But yeah, this essay feel evil though. In some ways, it kind of gets to the root of the issue, in my opinion. Okay. So yeah, I don't know what else to talk about. Let me see here. We already talked about Buddha nature. I talked about technique and biosemiotic. People can bring up any topic now and just talk about it, or I can just stop now. Like, is there any topic you want to talk about, Reddington, or I can talk about, or whatever? I already presented a lot, I think. So
Not really.
Not really. No, I see. Okay, yeah, let's see here. Well, I guess I'll just show this then. I guess. Let me see. Close tabs to right. Yeah, then share screen and entire screen, and then just show some stuff about like different bird species and their building and stuff. Buildings. Maybe after that, that's enough.
It looks like Neurojack's here too.
You know, and people keep coming in and out, and so
Yeah, that's how he does it.
Yeah,
he's-
I'll
his
give
bad
my battle
service.
service. Yeah, going in and out of buildings and stuff. But yeah. So sorry about that. I just want to wrap up my little question really quick. So, if you don't mind, so do you think that affirming people's gender dysphoria is positive or negative in their spiritual journey?
Well, yeah, you have to look at the ethos of the society and the culture. Let's imagine a pre-industrial nation, okay, and they don't like gender dysphoria, okay, and we go. I don't want to manipulate them. I don't want to tell them what to do. I don't want to like coerce them. Be like gender dysphoria is good. Just let them be. You know what I mean? Let them be. Let them develop their culture organically.
But no human society on Earth was like basically totally neutral on it, right? Like they may allow it or not allow it, but they weren't neutral, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, the point I'm making is that if that's not the thing I'm focusing on, if it organically developed to be positive or to be negative, I'm not going to interfere and tell them what to do or try to manipulate them to believe what I think is right. You know what I mean? I just let it be. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
that's not
okay,
okay,
great. So now we have the technology to transform this person on the DNA level to a species or a gender of their choosing.
Well, let me say this. What was it called again? Non-governmental organizations, the NGAs. They go to Africa, and now they're telling Africans to be more accepting of homosexuals. I don't like that. Just let them be. Why you gotta spread around and spread your values? Just let them be. You don't have to go tell this person to do that or this. You should focus on your own community.
Right. Well, but see, this is the thing is like by what metric are you able to even make that argument? You know what I mean? Like, are you making that argument based on like Buddhism or science or sociology or psychology or
I'm making the argument based on like trying to vicariously place myself into like an ancient society or culture. Like an ancient Persian in a village, or ancient Iranian in a village, or ancient Chinese in a village, or whatever. They don't care what such and such person outside of their sphere does. I mean, maybe they care for resources or something, because people have always fought wars, normally for resources or sometimes over like religious stuff. But it wasn't like they wanted to like care that much. Like, they prioritized.
So if the Spartans throw their babies that are unwanted off a cliff, I mean, who's to say they're wrong, right?
Yeah, I mean, let the Spartans do what they want. I mean, I don't really care as long as they don't try to tell me to throw my baby down the cliff. I mean, it's not my right, to like impose my standards on others. Like You know, that's, you know,
But
right now,
you can't deny that people will impose if they can impose, right? Like you
well, I
may
mean,
not
that
like it, but
happened throughout
people will
history.
do
That
that.
happened throughout history. You know, it happened throughout history,
Right.
and
And
you know,
so
yeah,
now that they have the ability to like impose the ability to do things on people who are being manipulated potentially into believing certain things about themselves and the world they live in, well, you're not really in a situation of choice and freedom and
oh, yeah,
free
that's the
will or
problem.
any of these things, right?
Yeah, that's the problem. And also, we don't have a real community anymore. You know, people in the past lived in tight-knit communities that were united by an ethos. You know, I mean, they were united by common set of values, and they were homogeneous
But that's the
relatively.
thing is like now we're on the path to everybody being living by the same ethos and the same homogeny. See what I mean?
Yeah,
So
that's
like
what I was.
by that standard, they're breaking some eggs to make a much better omelet. See what I mean? And a lot of the
I
people involved believe in that, right? So
mean,
like
this
that's
is
the thing is like by that standard, aren't you imposing your will on them? See, this is the trap. This is the trap of what we're dealing with, right? See,
yeah, that's the problem with growing technological complexity. And we already talked about this, but I'll say again, this is basically the gist of Illo's book. You can apply this to many domains, like the human, society, communal, state, the state. Yeah, he talks a lot about the state. And what else? You know, agricultural, like lots of stuff. You know, basically, there's a search for efficiency that leads to standardization, and then monism and automatism of technical choice and universalism. You know, like that's what you're talking about, universalism. And then there's an efficient ordering. You know, and then there's a necessary linking together to make that efficient ordering more and more tightly knit or connected to other things. And then there's a self-augmentation, which is like, it creates new technical problems that need to be solved, and it starts to loop again. But like agricultural, like monocrops, and intensive farming lead to soil erosion, which I mentioned before, but there are many other examples. You can think about pharmaceutical industry too, but it's a ton. And that leads to like new technical problems like soil erosion, and then you search for more efficient ways to fix that, because of the problems the
well,
technological system.
I guess here's a question then: If you're trying to understand metaphysics, like, are you thinking that people can choose their own metaphysics?
Well, that's the thing about metaphysics. The thing about metaphysics is just even a small shift in your metaphysical thinking can change the way you perceive everything, the way you interpret everything, and it can be very hard to remain 100% sure that your metaphysics is right, especially in an age where we're saturated with information. You know what I mean?
So wouldn't it be the goal of you and all of us to find out what the best metaphysics is for the right outcome? I mean, this is just a hypothetical. I'm not saying like I necessarily believe this, but I'm just saying like in theory, wouldn't it be to like find the best metaphysics and then find out how do you get people to believe in the best metaphysics for the best outcome away from the things that we're concerned about? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. That's why I encourage, honest assessment. If people disagree with me, they can come here and disagree as long as they're polite the way you are. You're very polite. I like that. But yeah, I mean, what you said is correct. You gotta just do your best. Be as honest as possible. There's certain things. I'll be honest with you. Like I know I accept common dissent, but I do think special intervention has some good arguments, but not special creation, personally speaking, because I'm looking at it like from
Well,
honest philosophical
but
assessment.
here's the thing is like, wouldn't you agree? Or well, maybe you'd agree, maybe not. But if I were to put forward that, like, let's just say, for instance, that let's just say for the sake of argument that Christian metaphysics, right? God made everything. Jesus is an aspect of God. The Holy Spirit is an aspect of God. Et cetera, right? You just say this, right? Whether it's true or not, if people lived a particular lifestyle that was diverting towards what you wanted, right, and away from what it's currently is, wouldn't you say that then it's inherently good?
That's a very good question. I was thinking about that last night and other nights. I do contemplate on a lot of the questions you bring up. That's a very profound question. Well, let me first proceed from this question in two ways. First, I want to make clear that one of the thinkers I like a lot, J. Scott Turner. You can look him up on YouTube. I talked to them personally on email. He's a Christian, Aristotelian. His ideas are very much like third way, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. The second thing I want to say is that, metaphysics and philosophy, maybe it's all just an approximation towards the infinite or transcendent based on their own cultural spheres, proclivities. You know what I mean? Like maybe like the ancient Christians, in Europe, they were connecting to God or the infinite in their own ways. And I'm not saying this from a perennialist perspective, but more from the perspective of like, let them stick to their tradition and not impose our ways onto them or something. I do have my own preferences. Like I say, I prefer the like Central Asia Buddhism. You know what I mean? Like, or like ancient China. Where, like
What about
Bodhi.
What about Manichaeism?
Oh, Manichaeism is a complex topic. I have read Colon Mani Codex. Hyperboreans' beliefs are very close to Manichaeism. Actually, I read Colon Mani Codex. And Manichaeism, I do respect. I actually think Manichaeism is more intellectually rich than Zoroastrianism, to be honest. There was a part of the Colon Mani Codex where Mani went insane from hearing the trees scream. And then when he plucked the fruit, he even heard the tree scream. But it's a very Dilmer tradition. Mazdakism, which was made by Mazdak the Younger, that's more Dionysian. It's more joyful. You know what I mean? Mazdak fought that when
Right. So I guess here's the question. And again, I know that I'm being a total dick interrupting your stream, but we all do it, so hopefully you understand. But so here's my question for you, right? Because I haven't had a really chance to like dig into this, and I'm not really being like inquisitive in this, and like I'm not trying to be like the police or something, but so like okay, so like if you say that we're headed towards this like negative outcome, I think we agree on what the negative outcome is, more or less, right? That technique is subsuming everything else. And what belief structure or metaphysics do you think is being imposed on all these people that makes them cooperate with it? Like, for example, we all go to work, we all send our kids to school, and we just take the path of least resistance because we are mammals and we live a certain way and it's been hijacked. We all, we get that, right? So, and again, that's a secular take. Obviously, there's a spiritual component to that, but that aside, I'm just trying to like broaden it out enough to like for anybody who's watching, right? So, what belief structure or metaphysics do you think are being imposed? Is the first part of that question. The second part is like, why do you think people are lapping it up so easily?
Well, before you came on, I actually talked about it. The first one is that agency and mind are not seen as special. In the modern synthesis and neo-Darwinism, I showed it the article. I can show the article again. I mean, you can read the article. It's actually kind of crazy shit. I don't like neo-Darwinism or modern synthesis. They claim biological agency is an illusion. It's fucking crazy shit. You know what I mean? And that's why I say look into Third Way or look into like J. Scott Turner or like Dennis Noble, people like that. You see, they say the acceptance would be detrimental to the progress of biological sciences. So anything that doesn't support progress of sciences is dismissed. They think you're a puppet, that you have an illusion of internal mental life. Yeah, that's what they believe.
So, and I think Machine has traced this back pretty far, and obviously it's multiple syntheses or synthesize, or you get it, whatever it is. So it's hard to trace down exactly what it is, but yeah, I agree with you. So have you ever heard of object ontology?
Yeah, I've heard about it a little bit. Yeah, I haven't looked into it that deep. But what about it though?
Well, but basically it's like, basically like a rock is the same as a person, and rocks have rights, and rocks have the right to exist just as much as a person or whatever, right? So like, you should respect I'm really being an idiot about it, but you get it. It's like basically like humans are not special in any way, consciousness is not special in any way.
No, I don't agree with that. But yeah, definitely life is special, and there's like growing degrees of like metacognitive awareness, awareness of itself, and also the ability to attribute intentions to others It's called theory of mind. You can look it up, theory of mind. And only a few organisms are known to do that. Like human beings can do that, elephants, dolphins, crows and ravens. Let me think what else. Chimpanzees and bonobos. There is a hierarchy. You see what I'm saying? Say there's a hierarchy of the like who is
Right.
the most aware, you know what I mean? Of course human
Right.
beings are at the top, you know what I mean? I don't see the problem with, you see, that's my issue with vegans, you know what I mean? Because vegans act like there's no hierarchy, okay? So let's say you know, you eat a rabbit, you know, in the wild. That's fine, you know, but I think it's much worse to eat a dolphin or whale, you know, because those are like highly have a rich internal mental life. You know, that's the reason why we don't eat human beings, because human beings have very rich internal experience. They have like autobiographical selves, and they have like capacity to connect to God. So I would say there's a hierarchy. I don't consider it entirely arbitrary where you cut off what you eat or don't. Even Uncle Teddy said he would never eat an owl. You know what I mean? He said that. He actually said that in an interview. Uncle Teddy would not eat an owl. I would think the line should be drawn like, I don't know, like at the capacity of theory of mind, or like, you know, like the richness of the social structure. Personally, I think wolves are very intelligent too. I would never eat a wolf or a dog. I would never eat a wolf or a dog. But yeah, that's the reason I don't like vegans. Of course, let me tell you that I didn't mention it. I did research on both crayfish and rats. Okay, when I had to like cut up the rats, I mean not the when I had to cut up the crayfish and look into their body, I didn't care. You know, crayfish are stupid as hell. Crayfish cannibalize each other without realizing it. I've seen it. You know, crayfish literally cannibalize each other without realizing. And but the rat is different. You know, when I was hugging the rat and petting the rat, I collected their brains and looked at their brain. It didn't make me feel good at all. You know, rats can be empathetic. Rats can be intelligent. You know, some rats are even bred to be more human-like in research.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Shit, look
agree.
it up.
And I pretty much agree with all that. So here's my thing is like whether it's true or not, and again this goes back to the whole Christianity thing of like metaphysics and stuff like this, like whether it's true or not, right? Like if people are adopting this like nonsensical, detrimental metaphysical thing, right? Like you know, from my perspective, I don't think that it's enough to just say, well, I want to play nice in the sandbox, you know. And obviously I think people like, you know, Teddy and other people, you know, and again, I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm saying like the question that I think is one of the most important is like, well, you're trying to play offense in a sense, but you also have to play defense in a sense, right? So it's like so you have to kind of like interrupt what they're doing, but it's like what like but there's something that's so attractive, like it's kind of like the mouse experiment or whatever, right? You know, they put the mouse in the maze and they give them like, okay, like a good metaphysics and a bad metaphysics, but the bad metaphysics gives them a bunch of dopamine, so they keep hitting the button until they, you know, rip their dick off and die or whatever, right? You see what I mean? So like so I guess that's the thing is like, you know, shouldn't we, you know, I guess, well, obviously this gets to a point where we can't really talk about certain things, but you know, like I guess the question is like, uh wouldn't that be the main focus of like how to interrupt that dopamine hit of like nihilism or, you know, self-destruction or whatever?
Well, you know, I support you, you know, what you're saying, you know, I know what you're saying, you know, you know, the thing is, uh, I want people, you know, the thing is, one cannot focus on everything at once, you know. I feel like what you're dealing with is a very valid question. You choose to be more pragmatic, you know. If I had children, I would be more pragmatic, you know, because, yeah, but I chose not to have children personally, you know, but I can understand a man who is more connected to his community, his ancestral country. You know, everyone has biases. You know, I have biases. You know, I'm a second generation immigrant who was born here, who has no connection to his ancestral country. You know what I mean? Like, I pretty much lost it. You know, besides some stuff I read here or there, you know. In a way, uh, uh, I'm kind of like disassociated from humanity in some sense. I can give analysis, you know, and I can be honest, you know, about certain
Right.
things and help inform you. But when it comes
Well,
to the pragmatism, maybe I'm not
well,
the
well,
best.
Well, I guess it sounds like what you're saying. And again, like this is not a critique of you or anything like that. This is not putting you down or anything. Because I struggle with the same thing, right? Like, like what were my ancestors speaking 1,000 or 2,000 years ago? Probably not English, right? And what were they doing? Probably not living in Rome, as it were, right? Like we're basically living in like a pseudo like neo Rome or something, right? We have like Roman and Greek culture mixed in with British and German culture and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So we're all in a cult of some sort, right? And so I guess that's the thing is like, so do we embrace the cult that we were born into and try to like uh, grab a slice of the pie or grab a slice of the leadership for ourselves and our family and our clan or our tribe, or do we just like go the nihilistic route and say like fuck humanity, or do we, you know what I mean? I think that's the hard question,
Yeah, that's actually interesting. In one of my first streams, I got the hard question. That's interesting. That's I know what you're saying. You know, uh, you know, human beings only live 80 years. Some of them live less. Like think when shit hits the fan. I mean, what's the most important are the spiritual questions. Like what happens to my mind or soul after I die, or was all of this will my legacy last in this world? Like, what will happen to me after I die or something? Like, and I feel like when you reach that point, those questions are more important. I wouldn't say go the nihilist route, but it does kind of lead to more like cynicism in regards to where mankind is heading. But like this kind of situation we're living in, it's like we're embedded into the Mongol. When Mongols invaded Iran and Central Asia, it led to civilizational collapse. You know what I mean? Like killed so many people, and just crazy, and Iran didn't even pick up until like I think 300 or 400 years later. The Mongols were devastating. That's what I'm trying to say. But we're like in a system now that's like a Mongol. You know what I mean? And that's different. The Mongol is like is like manipulating us in some ways. The Mongol, and it does kind of lead to a great cynicism. I wouldn't say nihilism though, because nihilism is like stuff like, oh, you have no soul, nothing happens to you after you die, or there's no greater purpose. I'm not a nihilist. I'm definitely not a nihilist. I think that something does happen and our conduct does affect it. It's extremely hard to say what though, like maybe heaven or hell or like rebirth or reincarnation. I mean, you can't die and come back and say that. I mean, I have my own biases, so I'm saying that's what I was saying. I say when you reach that point, that's what it
Well,
becomes.
well,
Like,
well. Allow me to read this quote, and I'll end with this just for now because I want to let you get back to where you want to go with it. But okay, here we go. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all seeming of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamplight over him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Uh, that was cool. I guess so. Uh, yeah, that's cool. I appreciate that contribution. Yeah, well, I have to think back on it more and other stuff. So, so I have 10 people watching. No, I think it's been about 4 hours, and maybe I should like end it now, or I don't know if I should cover anything else. That was a lot that we covered. Uh, so yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I still have a lot more to read and a lot more streams in the future. And try to be a bit more organized. This time I was more organized than last time. I think last time I was not organized at all. So let me see if I can remove this. Okay. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about, or for me to clarify on, or discuss, or no? Really. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
gotta
so.
take a look at the first part of the stream and I may message you if I have any questions for sure. But yeah, but yeah, if you're trying to shut it down, for sure.
You see comments. What's yeah. This one's pretty funny. What's the metaphysics of living in a well for 3 days? From Pinocchio. Yeah. Yeah, appreciate everyone who came to the stream. I'll keep reading more books and and uploading videos on the YouTube, and I'll make new stream and talk about other topics, like stuff to expand on and explore. And it does tie into TML's channel too and stuff. It's teams too, but I also explore different stuff that's interconnected with it and stuff, coupled together basically. That means like connected together basically. Yeah, there you go. So that's it. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, I appreciate everyone who came, and I hope everyone has a good day. And stuff like that. I think that's the end of the stream. I see you later at around 7:30 p.m. Or 7:45 or 8 p.m. And I'll tell you ahead of time if you can make it or not. TML.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I hope you have
sounds
a
good.
good. See you until then. Hope you have a good time until then. That's the end of the stream.
Oh yeah, thank you, my friend. Yeah, blessings, Sam.
Yeah,